Eugene Melnyk's a pretty interesting guy. For all the stuff that goes on about the hockey operations of the Ottawa Senators, at the end of the day, he still is usually a very interesting interview, which is what we actually have here on our hands today, as earlier in the week, Eugene Melnyk was interviewed for an episode on the Bob McCown Podcast earlier Sunday night that went over a few different ideas of the NHL, the return to play, or at least I guess you would call it the return to play 2. Version 2, the 2020-2021 season, I guess you could just say, and the All-Canadian division. Long story short, Eugene Melnyk is in a position where he understands the process and he understands why it's going down, but as we look further into the comments that he made, even though they were kinda half joking, half serious, they do indicate just the overall vibe for the Ottawa Senators and what exactly their plan is and their direction in this 2020-2021 season. Long story short, Eugene Melnyk doesn't like it. That's the bare bones argument about it, but we'll go over all the quotes over here. Take a look at this. This is an article on the Ottawa Sun written by Bruce Garrioch talking about what Eugene Melnyk said in the podcast. The title of the article here is this: Sens owner Eugene Melnyk says he understands why an all-Canadian division makes sense. And it's that all-encapsulating Canadian division that is capturing our attention once more. And because of this, because of all the stuff that's going on, the border closures between America and Canada, Eugene Melnyk came out here and he half-jokingly said that he is not a fan of the Canadiens, the Maple Leafs, the Jets, the Flames, the Oilers, the Canucks, and the Sens playing in the same division. No, he said with a laugh when asked about the scenario by McCown and well-respected broadcast John Shannon. It's only for a hockey reason. This is not our year. We'll be competitive, but this is the year the Canadian teams are all better. Every one of them, including mine. I'm still at the beginning of my rise up. Everybody else was good, and they're getting better. So, pause on that. Yes, indeed. Out of the 7 Canadian teams, it's very easy to see how all of them ended up getting better in some respects. The Vancouver Canucks, you could actually debate whether or not they got better or worse, but they still added on Nate Schmidt, who was probably the best defender on the team aside from Quinn Hughes at the moment, which is kind of sad, but hey, he's a good player. Calgary is in a position where they added on Jacob Markstrom. He's a very good goaltender. They added on Chris Tanev to recuperate the loss of that TJ Brody. Edmonton ended up adding a whole bunch of forward depth. My gosh, the Oilers are going to be stacked up front next season. And then you have the Winnipeg Jets, who added Paul Stastny, also had some depth defensemen as well. Who knows what Stastny and Laine can do again as a top 6 line. The top 6 of Wheeler, Scheifele, Laine, Connor, Ehlers, and Stastny is deadly. Arguably one of the best top 6s in the entire league. If you go over on to the Montreal Canadiens, well, they're a team that many people say might have had themselves actually the best offseason out of every NHL team. Tyler Toffoli, Josh Anderson, Jake Allen, all these acquisitions of guys that can make significant impacts sooner rather than later. Marc Bergevin really went out there and started spending that cap space well. And then you have the Toronto Maple Leafs, who still are in a position where they have that 3-headed monster, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares. 2 of those guys are getting better with age. The other one is kind of declining, but hey, he is still a very good franchise-defining center. You take a look at all the acquisitions that they made, and you say, darn, they're actually in a position where they are improving other parts of their roster that were kind of lacking earlier in the previous years. That's scary. So, Toronto is in a position where I could say they probably got better too, so it's tough for Ottawa. Because Ottawa did get better themselves, I will say that. Evgeny Dadonov is a good NHL player, very good NHL player. They got Tim Stützle, who is probably good enough to suit up year 1 in the NHL, who I think is going to make a big impact. You have another year of Brady Tkachuk, another year of Shabbat, another year of Bronstrom, who might even crack the league in a very, very good positive role this year. You have some good youthful pieces, but Eugene Melnyk said it best. His team, the Ottawa Senators, they're on the up and up. The other teams were already good, and then they just got better. The Sens, if you remember, they were one of the worst teams in the league last year, statistically speaking. So it is very unfortunate to take a look at this Canadian division and try to pinpoint the order of the top 6, because the top 6 amongst Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto, and Winnipeg, you could honestly go any direction and you can make a valid argument for it. It's just Ottawa, in my opinion, that is going to be last, and I'm pretty sure we made this known back in our video talking about my predictions for the All-Canadian division, because Ottawa got better despite starting out from a place where they were one of the worst teams in the league. The other teams got better, but they were already in the mid-tier reigns. All the other teams made the NHL's return to play. Sure, some of them didn't win their qualifying series, but all of them made the return to play in some capacity. Take a look at this. We've got to work on a strategy, and we have on how we're going to deal with this. Because we've got a bunch of young guys, and they're still growing, and they're good, but they're getting better. We want to be competitive, and we want to be a playoff team. The fact is, I may not like it, but that's concession we have to do. Nobody wins here. There's no winner out of this pandemic. It's one of the things we'd have to give up. You're going to have to give up attendance to at least the early games. From a hockey point of view, it's exciting. So I will say, this is kind of why I said at the beginning, Eugene Melnyk is always a very interesting interview, because even though he does have these views where he's like, yeah, I don't want a Canadian division. My team's going to get smoked. We're the worst team out of these 7 teams. If you group us all together, we're not playing with Detroit. We're not playing with Buffalo or New Jersey or all the other teams that were at the bottom of the league last year that are in close proximity to us, but they're over the border. We're not playing with any of those guys. We're playing with all return-to-play teams. Some of them were indeed eliminated in the qualifiers, but a whole bunch of them actually made the playoffs. So, what gives? And it's totally a fair perspective, but it is indeed interesting to take a look at that he is just saying, nobody wins here. This is it. This is what we have to deal with. We're in a position where we don't expect to be one of the better teams this year, but we still want to be a playoff team. We want to be a cup contender. We want to do that. And Melnyk said it himself a few weeks ago. He guarantees that within the next 4 years. So, yeah, there certainly is a little bit of an interesting discussion to have there. We're going to be playing a lot of Montreal, Toronto, and Winnipeg, plus the other Canadian teams, and that's fine. It's just from a hockey point of view, it's a tough division. We don't get to play the weaker teams. They're all good. It's good for Canada, and maybe this is the year a Canadian team gets there and wins, but hey, he's right. They are all good teams. And then the rest of the interview goes over a whole bunch of other really interesting stuff. I'll leave a link in the description to the podcast episode as well as the Ottawa Sun article, because they all kind of have their own little flavor of Eugene Melnyk comments over here. He talks about next year, what's going to happen after that, development. He talks about acquiring tough guys, which indeed is something that the Senators have been doing. They acquired Eric Branson. They still have Brady Tkachuk. Interesting little combo there. They have Tyler Klevin, who's a big guy they got. It's an interesting dynamic they're developing there in Ottawa. And there is a very specific plan. And I've said this a few times before myself, but I think the Ottawa Senators can get better sooner rather than later. It's just, now that we're already a month and a half, I think, into the NHL offseason, we kind of know where exactly all these teams stand now. If the Ottawa Senators were in a position where they got Alex Pietrangelo, for example, and they got Taylor Hall, and they did that same Matt Murray trade that they did where they got a nice goalie, I was saying it all along, man. Yeah, the Senators could get better sooner rather than later, but we kind of know what's going on now because all those other good free agents, all the big assets, and all the valuable pieces that were available, yeah, they only really got Matt Murray and they got Dadonov too, but at the same time, Matt Murray is good. It's just you're really betting on this guy to end up taking you over that hump, and for Dadonov, he's good, but he's no Taylor Hall. There was that number one big fish free agent that the Senators could have gone for, but hey, it might not have been in the plan immediately to go after and get that kind of a guy. So, who knows? The Ottawa Senators also lost out on Anthony Duclair, so I think a guy like Dadonov is a guy who kind of could balance out that goal production that you're losing out on. Again, though, Duclair, there was a whole bunch of inconsistency issues there, which is kind of why he's in a position where he's still unsigned at the time of recording this video. So, we'll see what the Senators' plan is, because Melnyk did say that he thinks the team is going to win a cup within the next 4 years, and if they're already going out there and saying that next year, the year where they're facing all Canadian teams, even just because of the circumstances, they are not going to win a cup, then I'm kind of trying to think about, okay, if you guys were so adamant and guaranteeing that 4-year cup window, and you guys are already giving up on this year, saying that it's going to be really tough, what's going to happen in the next 3 years? What are the moves then? Because that looks like a very interesting cocktail of trades and desperation moves if you really want to try to force your team into the win-now window in 2022, 23, or 24. It's not 2017 anymore, eh? So I'm personally very interested in seeing how that is going to go. But comment down in the comments what you think about Eugene Melnyk's comments. Obviously, it makes sense to understand why he wouldn't want an all-Canadian division because they're the worst team there. But still, let me know what you thought about this video. I hope you enjoyed. Social Dash Roll 99. And bye.